This is Global Business.
Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Robin Dwyer.
And I'm Sally Baudet. Our top stories. Chinese President Xi Jinping says Europe is a trustworthy partner for cooperation. He's been speaking to European Council President Antonio Costa.
China gears up for more foreign visitors during the Spring Festival as the country plans to expand its visa-free policy.
France's new Prime Minister facing his first big test in Parliament as he tries to win support for the budget, which brought down his predecessor.
Under investigation, Google faces scrutiny from Britain's competition watchdog over its dominance of the search market.
And the TikTok refugees searching for a new home. The Chinese app Xiaohongshu tops Apple's download chart in the United States.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has reaffirmed his country's partnership with the European Union in a phone call with European Council President Antonio Costa.
President Xi noted this year marks the 50th anniversary of strategic and diplomatic ties with the bloc, saying the EU is a trustworthy partner for cooperation. The phone call comes as tension remains high between China and the EU over tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles.
Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Will Denslow, who's in Brussels. So, Will, what more do we know about this exchange?
Well, Robin, in a readout, President Xi described this as a symbiotic relationship. He added that there is no clash between China and the EU when it comes to fundamental interests or geopolitical conflicts. He added that they can be partners working together towards shared successes, adding that the relationship should be built on mutual trust. Now, as far as Antonio Costa is concerned in the EU, well, he said that there's a willingness to work to address issues such as economic and trade differences. Now, this is an incredibly significant trading relationship. China marks the EU's second biggest trade partner. There was over $770 billion worth of trade between the two in 2023 alone, but there have been plenty of thorny issues between the two sides over recent months, namely, of course, last year the EU imposing additional tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles up to an additional 35%. The EU has accused China of dumping heavily subsidized electric vehicles on Europe's market, and according to a recent report in China, they said that EU actions amounted to unfair trade and investment barriers. Also, in recent days, the EU has accused China, saying that there is clear evidence that EU suppliers of medical devices have no fair access to Chinese public lenders. So that just shows a few of the major barriers in this relationship. But of course, going forward, we're just days away before Donald Trump assumes the presidency in the United States. Mario Draghi, the former European Central Bank chief, has warned that if there were to be a potential trade war between the world's two largest economies, the US and China, then potentially the EU could be caught in the middle. So this is certainly an incredibly significant time for Antonio Costa to be having a call with President Xi.
Will, thank you very much. Our correspondent William Denslow in Brussels.
Now, on the financial markets, the main Chinese stock indexes have made gains.
The Shanghai Composite rallied 2.5% to 3,240 points. It follows a pledge from China's Securities Regulatory Commission to make every effort to sustain a stable recovery of the securities market.
The smaller Shenzhen index performed even better, rising by almost 3.8% to more than 10,000 points.
And in Hong Kong, the Hang Seng recovered from a 4-year low, climbing by more than 1.8%.
Earlier, the People's Bank of China expressed confidence in the stability of China's currency.
At a press conference, bank officials said measures will be taken to strengthen the resilience of the foreign exchange market. CGTN's Zhou Yixin reports.
Officials from the People's Bank of China outlined the strong foundations for maintaining financial stability, This includes increasing cross-border trade and investment, the current account surplus remaining at reasonable levels, and steady net inflows of foreign investment. They stressed these factors provide a solid foundation for balancing foreign exchange supply and demand while ensuring financial stability.
In the coming period, China's economic recovery will continue to consolidate. The overall balance of international payments will remain intact. The resilience of the foreign exchange market will continue to grow, and the renminbi exchange rate has all the conditions to remain stable.
Officials also highlighted that a series of proactive fiscal and monetary policies, either already implemented or about to be introduced, will further reinforce the country's economic recovery.
Officials say the People's Bank of China will continue to adjust and optimize policy measures, maintain ample liquidity, promote a more accommodative social financing environment, and further reduce the cost of social financing.
China's credit structure has also shown significant improvements, with strong growth in loans to the manufacturing sector, small and micro businesses, and innovative enterprises.
We'll continue to lower banks' funding costs, stabilize interest rates, and improve financing for businesses and individuals.
Despite a complex and uncertain global environment, officials expressed confidence in China's strong economic fundamentals and its ability to handle external challenges. They reaffirmed their determination to further optimize policy measures in an effort to drive sustainable and high-quality economic development. 周星 CGTN, Beijing.
The value of loans offered by Chinese banks fell for the first time in 13 years during 2024.
Financial institutions lent just under $2.5 trillion, according to the People's Bank of China. The weaker demand for financing comes amid concern about deflation and a housing slump.
Swiss banking giant UBS says China remains attractive to foreign investors despite economic uncertainties. The bank is forecasting a 6% rise in the Shanghai index in 2025, with major growth coming from non-financial sectors. UBS officials also expect rate cuts of around 30 to 40 basis points.
First and foremost is really how to ensure and really revive the overall confidence from the corporate executives, both private and the public, and also how to revive that consumer confidence so consumer can spend. So we have a lot of savings continue to grow. It's really how they feel confident about the future and then to consume and then invest further. I think so that would be the key I would be focusing on. But in a medium to longer term, so China continued to be the growth story. So we favor some of the market leaders in the internet and the technology and high-end manufacturing sector, and also consumer staple. So those are all the sectors our investors are very keen to look into.
First, the market or the home buyers, they are still wait-and-see attitude because they are concerned about the property price may fall afterward. And also at the same time are concerned about the project quality, especially about the delivery quality for the new home sales. And therefore, we have seen there is a pretty big change in terms of demand shift from primary to secondary. So I guess what the government could do here is that, first of all, to send out a stronger signal regarding on property price had already bottomed, which the government had already done that. And the second thing is to lower the interest rate for both the primary, for the new mortgage as well as for the existing mortgage.
Chinese self-driving technology firm WeRide has boosted its global expansion, launching a pilot project testing fully autonomous cars in Switzerland. The company's founder says it's looking to markets including Europe and Southeast Asia to bolster international business and enhance its innovation capabilities.
China's Great Wall Motors says it expects a near doubling of its income in 2024 compared to the previous year. Preliminary estimates put the company's earnings at $1.7 billion. That's 80% higher than 2023. Executives say the rise is due to growth in overseas sales and a streamlining of its domestic car brands.
Spain plans to impose tax of 100% on non-EU residents buying homes in the country to try and help tackle its housing crisis. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says in 2023, non-EU residents bought around 27,000 properties, while house prices have risen 48% in the last decade.
Shanghai authorities are hoping to bring Taylor Swift to the city this year. In an interview with Chinese media outlet The Paper, officials revealed they'd held talks with the pop superstar's team about performing in Shanghai. Swift's Eras tour, which ended last month after earning more than $1 billion, did not come to China.
China's Spring Festival travel rush is underway, with a record 9 billion domestic trips expected between now and the 22nd of February across the country's roads, rails and skies. Our correspondent Xu Hua reports.
I'm now at Shenzhen North Railway Station, which is still buzzing with passengers during the night time. As we know, Shenzhen has the highest migrant population ratio of 68% compared to its total population, surpassing the other three first-tier cities, Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. Therefore, Shenzhen will be one of the cities with most people moving in and out during Spring Festival. And as you can see, passengers are carrying their luggage with different kind of gifts, eager to waiting for their trains. So as we know, as of 2024, high-speed rail has covered 96% of cities in China with a population of over 500,000. So more and more people will choose high-speed rail to travel or to go back home, as it is more convenient and comfortable. And this year, the National Railway Network is expected to handle over 500 million passenger trips during the 2025 Spring Festival travel period. So to meet the increased demand, the railway authorities have introduced a special Spring Festival train schedule. So to learn more about that, I'm glad to be joined by Miss Meng Yu. Miss Meng, so from station manager from Shenzhen North Railway Station. So tell us more about this special train schedule.
In the next 14 days, Shenzhen North Railway Station is expected to serve over 17 million passengers, about 414,000 each day. From today to January 28th is the busiest. To ensure a smooth travel, our station plans to operate over 1,000 trains daily and introduce 120 more overnight high-speed trains to meet the demand.
So, what kind of measures have you taken to cope with this peak time?
To make travel easier, Shenzhen North Railway Station has a new pick-up and drop-off system. We offer services like information inquiry and phone charging to make passenger journey more convenient. We have improved the cell phone signal for smooth texting and calling. For passengers need extra help, their calling window service counter with trained staff. We also have an urgency passenger list for quick enter. To keep everyone safe during the busiest periods, emergency medical station with necessary supplies and staff have been set off the prompt medical attention.
So we can see a lot of work has been done. Thank you, Ms. Meng. So to wrap up, the first day of this Spring Festival travel rush has been giving a very busy and exciting start to the most important festival in China. So with millions of people on the move, the railway station as well as the airlines have been working tirelessly to make sure the passengers will have a joyful Spring Festival.
As well as a rise in domestic tourism, this year's Spring Festival has also seen a big increase in travel from overseas. According to booking website Trip.com, orders from foreign tours have more than tripled in 2025. compared to last year. There's also been an overall rise in international tourism to China. Official data shows foreign nationals made almost 65 million entries and exits in 2024, up more than 80% on the year before. The number of those entering without a visa more than doubled to over 20 million. That's, of course, after China expanded visa-free access to travellers from 38 countries for stays of up to 30 days. Well, for more on this, here's Jonathan Carr, Managing Director of North Asia at BCD Travel.
Today marks the first day of 40-day Spring Festival transportation period. So basically, during this time, we get a massive amount of people traveling across the country, mainly people going back to their hometown to reunite with their family and celebrate the Spring Festival. But in recent years, we see more and more people actually taking the opportunity to travel and experience the world and the rest of the country and the world. So this is a very important time. And I think most importantly this year, what is happening is that the government is giving an extra day of holiday. So instead of the normal 7 days we get 8 days of holidays. So it's really going to be a boost. We're expecting a lot more people traveling and going around the country and the rest of the world.
We've also seen China really push to extend visa-free travel for foreigners. It does seem to be paying off if we compare what we've seen with an increase in foreign travellers. Is this the right way forward? Do you think that China should look to do more?
Yes, I definitely see that because I think it is important. Tourism, it's a very strong revenue generator for the country, and also it's very important for cultural and business exchanges around the world. So I think that it is very important, and we're seeing the results. So I think it is can be expected that we see further doubling of inbound tourists in the coming year. With there are now over 30 countries that have a visa-free travel policy coming to China, with an additional 54 countries that have the transit visa-free policy, including the US, Canada, and the UK. So I think it's really facilitating and encouraging people to come to China and look at China for themselves.
So tourism definitely increasing, domestic and international. Do you think 2025 might be the year where China gets up to pre-pandemic level, even exceeding them perhaps?
Yeah, so I think depends on the metrics we measure it. So I think for domestic travel, we've already exceeded the 2019 level. For international, international travel, it's still a little bit behind. But I think going outbound, it may be the year that we are able to return to pre-pandemic levels. In fact, it depends on the routes. Some of the Asia-Pacific routes were already back to very close to 2019 level. And I think most importantly, for us normal people, we need a world peace where safety is the best thing to encourage people to travel.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. A new face for an old fight. France's Prime Minister tries to win support for the budget that brought down his predecessor.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. So it's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us. And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
informed in an information age. The fact is, people are more often misled by misinformation. You might think every voice is heard in a digital world. The fact is, many nations and peoples are still underrepresented. And data poverty shuts out many. We at CGTN are committed to transcending the information gap and the digital divide. CGTN, bridging nations and civilizations. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. Now, France's new Prime Minister has told Parliament he's cutting the country's growth forecast. During a crucial speech, Francois Bayrou also said he'll reopen talks on controversial pension reforms. He's hoping to win opposition support for the budget and avoid the fate of his predecessor, whose government, of course, brought him down last month. Our correspondent Ross Cullen is in Paris, joining us now. So, Ross, any early indications of whether enough has been done to bring this government together?
Well, hi, Sally. Unclear yet if the opposition do have enough numbers to force a no-confidence vote to be approved. We do know that one is going to be submitted. The far left have said that they will be putting down that paperwork Thursday or Friday to force a no-confidence vote in Francois Bayrou, trying to bring down the government, just as they successfully did in December, ousting the then Prime Minister Michel Barnier, forcing the government to collapse, forcing budget talks to collapse. That is the intention of the opposition this time, to try to bring down the next Prime Minister. That's something that they would like to do. We know that the far left are the ringleaders of this latest attempt to bring all the opposition parties together to bring down the government. Unclear yet, though, Sally, if they have got the sufficient support, especially from MPs on the far right in the National Rally part of Parliament, and their support for this no-confidence motion would be crucial if they wanted to oust Francois Bayrou. Now, he had his set-piece speech today, trying to ensure that he doesn't be brought down after just 1 month in the office. He did announce new measures on education, immigration. He spoke about France's increased level of indebtedness, saying that under every president since Francois Mitterrand in the 80s, through Jacques Chirac in the 90s, Nicolas Sarkozy, Francois Hollande, and even under Emmanuel Macron, France has been increasingly indebted, and he wanted to do something about that, saying that he would be looking to make major savings. He also addressed pension reform. And this is so controversial, the idea to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. We saw riots, we saw mass street protests in 2023 when this was on the table and when it was forced through Parliament. Opposition lawmakers were listening in to see if Francois Bayrou would be suspending the reform, if Francois Bayrou would be repealing the reform, and he said no, neither option at the moment would be pursued by the government. He said the pension reform was urgent. He said it was vital as well, but he did say that he would be setting up a working group in the coming months with representatives from all political parties and the unions in the same room. He said, sitting around the same table, a conclave is how he described it. All questions would be allowed, nothing will be off the table, including raising the retirement age, if, he said, at the end of that process there could be an agreement on a new fair and just form of pension changes, then he would be open to adopting that law. But it's going to be very hard for all the opposition parties and the government and the unions to be on the same page. But nevertheless, he said that he wanted to start that process. So we have seen some new measures announced. We have seen the pension reforms be addressed, but the drama will be continuing later this week, Sally, with that no confidence vote. At the moment, unclear if the opposition have sufficient numbers to bring down the government.
All right, thanks so much for that update. That's our correspondent Ross Cullen in Paris.
The UK's competition watchdog has launched an investigation into Google's search services amid calls in the United States for the tech giant to be broken up. Using new powers, the Competition and Markets Authority will look into how the search engine affects businesses and consumers. Well, our correspondent Ray Addison is following the story. So why is Google under investigation, and why now?
Well, according to the Competition and Markets Authority, Google accounts for more than 90% of all search queries in the United Kingdom, and more than 200,000 UK advertisers use Google's search advertising service. So that really is seen as an unprecedented level of dominance. And the CMA is saying that it's their job to ensure that Google doesn't use that dominance to harm any kind of competition. When it comes to why have they not investigated before? Well, the powers that the CMA are using are actually new. They came in on Jan 1st under the UK Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Act, and they're now going to have 9 months to carry out this investigation to decide if it's using its position to prevent innovation by competitors, whether they're giving preference to their own services, and also specifically in relation to artificial intelligence and their use thereof. Now, if the CMA decides that Google has done something wrong, it could be designated with something called strategic market status. If they are classified under the SMS, they would be bound by tougher rules of conduct, including being forced to make the data that they collect available to their rivals. And what business doesn't love being told they have to do that? They could also have to give publishers more control over how they use their own data, and that status would last for 5 years. And if they breach any rules during that period, then they could be fined up to 10% of their global turnover, so not an insignificant amount of money. Now, Google has responded, as you would expect, saying that Google Search supports millions of UK businesses to grow by reaching customers in innovative ways, and they look forward to engaging constructively and laying out how our services benefit UK consumers and also businesses.
Ray, thank you very much. Our correspondent Ray Addison.
TikTok has denied claims that China will allow the sale of the company's US operations to Elon Musk, calling it pure fiction. The Chinese-owned platform is trying to persuade the US Supreme Court to block a law requiring it to be sold off or banned by January the 19th. That, of course, is the day before Donald Trump's inauguration. Our correspondent Owen Fairclough has more.
It's TikTok's last stand in the US. The Supreme Court hearing an appeal against a law that will force it to either divest its US operations by January the 19th or wind them down. The outgoing Biden administration thinks TikTok is a national security threat, claiming it could hand over US user data to be manipulated by Chinese authorities. But Beijing says the US is abusing national security to stop fair competition. And during the hearing, some justices were skeptical of the national security argument, while raising concerns about the implications for free speech of shutting down a social media platform. TikTok has repeatedly insisted it protects user data. And supporters say US authorities are both fear-mongering and violating a constitutional right to free speech. They include incoming President Donald Trump, who takes office the day after the ban would take place, and even filed a legal brief to support keeping TikTok. TikTok has argued that legal and logistical issues would prevent it from divesting from its parent company ByteDance, but has offered the US a compromise that would effectively switch the app off in the face of any political pressure. Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
Well, many TikTok users in the United States are not waiting to find out if the app will disappear. Instead, they're already looking for alternatives. And one of those is the Red Note app. It's known to millions in China as Xiaohongshu, or literally Little Red Book, and has been described as a mashup of Instagram, TikTok and Pinterest. Although it's not been marketed to a Western audience, it's leapt to the top of the Apple download charts in the United States. In China, it's often used as a search engine for local tips. And for TikTok refugees, as those people leaving the platform have become known, that is part of the appeal.
Anyone else realize that on Xiaohongshu, Red Book, that everything that was great about TikTok was actually from China's FYP and their communities? The food, some of those like DIY home videos are all there.
Not like this platform. This one is an actual Chinese app. In fact, when you go on there, you got to click a button to get it translated from Chinese to English. Here's the problem, and I don't know who's doing the government's PR, but they're not doing a great job of it. You cannot take something from a generation of people, especially when you're talking about millions of people, and not give them an option to replace it. And unfortunately, the other apps are not giving social media folks the freedom, the flexibility, the honesty that TikTok provides. It's just not. So now they're flocking to RedNote in droves under the hashtag, and I can't make this up, under the hashtag TikTok refugee.
Dr. Conor McKeown is a lecturer in digital media at the University of Stirling in Scotland.
I think it's really important that when we see the kind of numbers that are coming in, hundreds of thousands of users, some people saying millions of users moving from TikTok over to Xiaohongshu, we don't try to read this as any kind of long-term migration because one app is better or more enticing than another. This is because the US government have made it very clear that TikTok needs to change the way they operate within the United States, or they were going to ban access from the app through various ISPs. That has now happened, and people in America particularly are now trying to use a rival Chinese app to make their voice heard and to say that they would have much rather continue to use TikTok than to have this kind of experience.
So we're seeing one app in particular seeing the benefit from these TikTok refugees, known in English as RedNote. Why are people from the US choosing this app in particular?
People are choosing this, I think, because this is a form of digital protest, and nothing makes their voice more clear than signing up to the app that sounds most explicitly like a Chinese app. You know, a lot of users are reporting that they have no idea how to use the app. They're getting help from other people that are bilingual on the app that happen to be based in America to help them navigate its Chinese user interface. So I think that it's all about sending a message, and they have gone for the little red book to try and make their voice clear.
When it comes to Chinese social media apps, until now we haven't really seen them be popular outside of China, unlike perhaps e-commerce sites like Temu and Shein, for example. Do you think this is going to signal a shift, them expanding more aggressively outside of China?
So I think that that's a little bit of a misunderstanding, and it's a real problem with the way the West views the internet and their use of the internet now. Everywhere you go in the West, there are signs for Alipay. And we have to understand that the big companies, ByteDance, Tencent in China, have had a huge role to play in what we as Westerners would consider to be our online infrastructure for a very long time. And I think what is really good about this is that it signals kind of an attitudinal shift in users, that possibly we're going to start waking up to just how international our online access is and just how political our online presence is.
You can get highlights from the week's news in Europe and China direct to your inbox from CGTN's Storyboard email newsletter. Sign up at europe.cgtn.com/newsletter.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Who will pay, as insurance claims from the California wildfires are estimated to run to more than $30 billion.
What do we mean when we talk about the difference?
Brazen axe.
The difference is in the detail, the background,
defense ministers from
the wider angle and perspective of every story, wherever the story may be. CGTN. See the difference.
We are all connected. Connected by ideas. A shared humanity. stay connected.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe with Sally Burdett and Robin Dwyer. The headlines again. Chinese President Xi Jinping says Europe is a trustworthy partner for cooperation. He's been speaking to European Council President Antonio Costa.
China gears up for more foreign visitors during the Spring Festival as the country plans to expand its visa-free policy.
And France's new Prime Minister is facing his first big test in Parliament as he tries to win support for the budget which brought down his predecessor.
A deal on a ceasefire in Gaza is the closest it has been in months. This is according to Qatar, one of the mediators in the negotiations.
Israel and Hamas say truce talks are at a critical phase, with some details still to be finalised. The draft proposal would see 33 Israeli hostages released as part of the first stage in return for 1,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. In the past few minutes, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that the ceasefire deal is ready to be concluded and that both sides must take steps to find a lasting peace.
Our imperative is not to turn back the clock to the way things were before October 7th. It's to forge a new reality for the Middle East in which all people are more secure, all can realize their national aspirations, all can live in peace. Is it hard? Yes. Is it impossible? No. Is it necessary? Absolutely yes.
Firefighters in Los Angeles are still trying to contain several wildfires as the city braces for more strong winds.
Forecasters are warning of heavy gusts which could spread the flames to new areas and force more people to flee their homes. Associated Press correspondent Philip Crowther is in Los Angeles.
Those winds are picking up as we speak. These are the Santa Ana winds that are being blamed for turning these wildfires around Los Angeles into infernos in urban areas of this city. They are now at 64 kilometers per hour in coastal areas, for example. We're not feeling all too much of them here in this part, but up in the mountains they are now at over 100 kilometers per hour. That's not as strong as the hurricane force winds at the beginning of last week that led to so much destruction. So the firefighters, they are now positioned around Los Angeles just in case fires start and just in case those fires are then whipped up by these stronger winds. We are in Altadena right now. This is a part of Los Angeles that is almost entirely destroyed. The building you can see behind me, it's the fire department here, pretty much the only building standing in this neighborhood after these fires over the last week. So these are firefighters who are getting ready to head out in case anything happens. All the preparatory work that they have been able to do has been done. Those planes with fire retardant, they have been used all the way into last night. That fire retardant is to stop the fires from spreading if and when they happen. There's a huge amount of firefighters available now as well. They're coming not just from the state of California, but from 9 other U.S. states as well, from Mexico, from Canada as well. And water trucks also have been positioned in important areas. Remember that there simply wasn't enough water to put out all those fires last week. And just a sign of how on edge people are here. A small fire started in Ventura County. That's 89 kilometers away from Los Angeles, but still led to live broadcasts on television here in the area. But that was put out pretty quickly.
Fire crews must be exhausted, and the damage is in the billions of dollars. Who's going to pay for it?
That's a really good question. It's not entirely clear who is going to be doing that. This is likely to be the costliest fire in the history of the United States. Reconstruction of these areas that are completely obliterated, that could cost up to $15 billion, but the actual cost of everything, that also means lost wages, lost jobs, lost everything in these areas that are obliterated is much, much higher indeed. some relatively good news for those homeowners, well, who no longer have homes right now. Their mortgage payments have been paused by some major U.S. banks. But as for who will pay for all of this, will it be the insurance companies? Unlikely. Is even everybody insured here? No, absolutely not. The federal government, though, is trying to do as much as it possibly can. The Biden administration, in its last days in power, says that it will pay for all of the disaster response costs here in Southern California. And President Biden also announcing that everybody affected by this fire will get a one-off payment of $770. Doesn't sound like much, but it will go towards buying the most essential things. There are a lot of people who are homeless here right now.
Insurance claims from the California wildfires could run to more than $30 billion. That's according to analysis from major U.S. banking groups.
Let's talk to our correspondent, John Terrace in New York. So, John, these are really big numbers these banks are talking about.
Yes, and I have to say as well, I think it's worth bearing in mind, this is a television disaster. We're covering this because it looks so awful on camera. But there are plenty of awful things like this that happen to people all over the world all the time. And I think it's very important to remember that, yes, there are poor people there who have lost everything. And yes, there are no stores open anymore, gas stations, public houses, all that kind of stuff. It is true that it's all gone. But, it will be rebuilt eventually. And I think one of the things I learned from covering the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico about 10 years ago is that you say to people, how has this affected your life? And they go, oh, I've lost everything, I've lost everything. And then you find out that they have 2 other homes elsewhere in the country. And they have 7 other businesses that they're working with their brother-in-law and their father-in-law. So I do think we have to bear that in mind. Yes, it is a disaster, no question. But I think Americans presently are going overboard about it. It's the only thing on television here. You do have to remember other people in the world suffer just as much. But yes, these numbers are eye-popping. Wells Fargo, which is a California-based bank, tells us with Goldman Sachs this morning that it could amount to $30 billion, and that's $10 billion more than last week when J.P. Morgan Chase, the most influential bank here, said it was going to be $20 billion. Now, Joe Biden, as we just heard, has promised $770 for each person affected by this fire. That is true, to pay for immediate emergencies. He said the federal authorities will stick with everybody there all the way through. But already the Republicans who are coming into power next week, as you know, who control the Senate and also the House of Representatives, are saying things that any federal money that goes to help people in California should have strings attached. And the reason for that is they want to politically attack Gavin Newsom, who's the governor of California, and Karen Bass, who is the Democratic mayor of Los Angeles, because they feel that the things they did or didn't do, including coppicing and cutting the fire brigade budget, have led to the scale of this particular disaster. The latest news is that the Santa Ana winds are picking up again. These are very, very powerful winds that can dry out a whole mountainside of grass in just 24 hours, which is why the grass there is so brittle. And, I think basically when you live there, you make a pact with the devil. One is the San Andreas Fault, which gives you earthquakes, and the other one is the whole ecosystem in Los Angeles and great swaths of California is based around fire. Do you know there are plants there? They call them the chaparral, what do they call them? Chaparral shrubs, fire poppies, bay laurel, stuff like that. They can only drop their seeds and pollinate if a fire goes through. The problem on this occasion was that we had a fire in just the wrong spot, with the strong Santa Ana wind sending sparks into the air. It's all very, very, very unfortunate, but it's something that Los Angeles people have to live with on a daily, if not annual basis.
OK, John, let's leave what's happening in Los Angeles for a minute and talk about what's happening on Wall Street, if you like. Some big numbers out, including wholesale inflation.
2 data dumps this week. Tomorrow, Wednesday, CPI, that's inflation paid by Americans in the stores and the gas stations and for their services. We've just had PPI, which is less sexy, if you will. It's wholesale inflation. It's the inflation paid by the people that make the things that we go on to buy in the store. So it's the raw material inflation, if you like, and it came in better than expected. For December, it was elevated by 0.2%, not 0.4%, which was estimated, and also how it was in November. For the year, 3.3%, which is much higher than the 1.1% of last year. If you take core inflation, which is food and energy, out, it came in absolutely flat, whereas we've been looking for it to be up by 0.3%. This will obviously impact the Federal Reserve's decision on interest rates, which comes a week or so after the inauguration on the 28th and the 29th. It's very tough to say what they're going to do, but people here expect the Federal Reserve to pause in January, mainly because it'll be so soon after the inauguration, and they'll be waiting to see what Donald Trump actually does. Now, as a result of that PPI figure, the Dow has now gone into the red, and the S&P too. So we're in the red now, whereas we had mixed markets a few minutes ago.
And John, briefly, tell us about Boeing. Their deliveries are still low.
The reason the S&P went into the red half an hour or so ago is because of Boeing. Basically, they've given us their delivery numbers, and they are terrible. So here we go. Airbus in Toulouse delivered 766 aircraft in 2024. Boeing in December, just 30, and 348 for the whole of the year. They only had 7 orders in December, and this is the one that will get you. This is the thing this is really amaze you. They have a backlog in aircraft deliveries of 5,549 aircraft. Boeing had a terrible 2024, culminating with the Jeju air crash in Korea, which killed 179 people. That was a Boeing 737-800. Terrible 2024. Is it bad for Boeing? Well, yes, it's bad, but if you're an airline, you can't just swap to Airbus. You have to stick with Boeing if you're a Boeing aircraft user for many, many years. So Boeing will have to make up the backlog. The question is how quickly. Boeing shares down 2%, dragging the Dow.
John, thank you very much. Our correspondent John Terrett in New York.
Concern is growing in Canada over the rising cost of living, in particular the price of food and housing.
It comes amid political uncertainty after last week's announcement by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that he is stepping down. Our correspondent Evangelo Sipsas reports.
Here in Toronto's East York neighborhood, it's a familiar story. Rising costs, wages that just aren't keeping up, and a housing market that feels further out of reach each passing day. Jim Sasakis, who has been running his cafe and bar since 2013, says he's feeling the squeeze more than ever.
When we first bought the business, we were paying $3,100, $3,200 a month for the whole building. And now I'm paying $4,100 just for the commercial space here. So, yeah, a lot. Like, it's become expensive. These businesses cannot make money anymore. It's not like, to be really honest, if it keeps going like this 3, 4, 5 months down the line, I will sell the business.
For many just like Jim, it's not just the cost of running a business, but personal housing expenses that have become challenging.
Okay, when I came here 2013, I was paying $1,100 for a 1-bedroom. I switched to a 2-bedroom, I was paying $1,400. Now I'm paying $1,500 because I'm with the old rent. If I leave from my apartment now and look in the same area for the same apartment, we're looking at $2,500 to $3,000 a month. It's a lot of money. You cannot live here.
Canada's political scene is in turmoil. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's sudden resignation has sent shockwaves through the economy, with the Canadian dollar dropping below 70 cents US, a level not seen since the early days of COVID-19 pandemic. Housing costs have soared to an average of about $500,000. Analysts warn of a new wave of uncertainty for the economy, but also the financial markets.
We don't know who the next leader is going to be. We don't know when the next election is going to be. We don't know when Parliament will be in a position to actually respond to some of the things that are coming forward to challenge Canada. Some of them, many of them, coming out of the United States and Donald Trump's incoming administration. And so uncertainty is very much the concern, I think, on the minds of Canadians.
With the economy topping the list of voter concerns across provinces, there's mounting pressure on leaders to act.
Affordability or inflation, that's hitting the top of every poll in every province. People are struggling. And the same is true in the United States and in many places throughout Europe. And given that affordability is that priority, and many of the activities that Donald Trump is engaging in are likely to affect not just affordability for Canadians, but for Americans.
Canadians are feeling the strain, and the pressure on leaders couldn't be higher. With no political stability in sight and challenges piling up, people are now looking for more stability and hope. Evangelos Ipsas for CGTN, Toronto.
In news just in, the UK government's anti-corruption minister Tulip Siddiq has quit her role over an investigation into her financial links to Bangladesh.
Allegations emerged about London properties linked to Ms Siddiq's aunt, the ousted former Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Siddiq, who had stayed at some of the properties, had already referred herself to the parliamentary ethics watchdog. She has now stepped down as Treasury Minister, insisting she hasn't breached the ministerial code, but admitting that the issue had become a distraction.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. A global update for this Chinese instrument. We meet the pipa player, who's mixing cultures in her music.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
Unprecedented scenes that we saw.
The cleanup operation is now well and truly underway.
Parts of southern Europe remain in a state of emergency.
Context gives meaning. People make history.
Far more than 1,000 people have come here today.
But authorities are still on high alert.
So now we've actually become the border on this road.
A complex world demands a comprehensive view.
But with the cleanup efforts more or less under control,
the economic impact is bound to ripple across the country.
There's plastic pollution everywhere.
Because the world today matters for your world tomorrow.
This is the living area of the crew.
The focus is firmly on future technologies.
Well, this is something completely different.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. Now, it's one of the most popular Chinese instruments. The pipa has a 2,000-year-old history, but one well-known musician is combining its traditional sound with a new global influence.
Wu Man has been telling Louisa Lee about her place in the worldwide music scene.
Welcome to our show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Your pipa has taken you to many places in the world, and with your strong connection, you brought back home with your pipa. So welcome back, and welcome back to Beijing.
Thank you.
You're here to release your new album, which is inspired by the Dunhuang pipa score. Can you tell us about this project?
So that first time I visited there, because the big documentary about Dunhuang, I was a part of the main character to revisit the cave and to discover the pipa, because of the pipa history, it's quite important role in the Dunhuang history. And also the musicologist, Mr. Zhu Xiaofeng, and he showed me the replica, the copy of the score. And it was fascinating to me. I was like goosebumps. And I get very excited. And I said, wow, this is a great project to record those tunes, become alive.
Are you still able to read it, or you have to translate it first before you can create something?
I've been working with many Central Asian musicians, from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, or Indian. So give me that imagination, that sound, kind of imagine way back 2,000 years ago, how the Pipa sound could it be.
What kind of voice or what kind of sounds are you trying to recreate with this new album?
This is 1,000 years ago music. The lute, the pipa, the role in the Chinese music, that society, that time, accompany instrument. It's more accompany with the voice, accompany with the dance. Simple plucking, that's it. It's not a busy, virtuoso, a lot of notes. No, it's a quiet, it's a simple but deep.
Did it evoke any strong feelings for you when you walk into the cave and saw the Pipa score?
Pipa score wasn't there already. The cave is empty. Everything is gone. The original score is in Paris, in the museum. I walked in many others' cave. There they have painting. The pipa player holding the instrument like this, like that. Feels like probably I was here before. Something like that.
You feel like you have a connection with
I totally have a connection. I feel like connection there. I feel like, oh, I want to do this. Feels like I want to continually that spirit, that music, that history.
What do you want your listeners to feel?
What I want to do is provide the score become live so we can listen to, oh, that's the melody.
So it's more like you kind of want to give people this kind of imagination, bring them a bit back to how it might have been.
Exactly. And also the melody is very, very different than modern Chinese music. Chinese, Central Asia, all mixed together. That kind of music represented that time, that history.
You also work with a lot of musicians around the world from different cultures. What do you want to say with your pipa when you're working with other musicians from different cultures?
Well, I think this kind of instrument, string plucking instrument, exists everywhere. So there is nothing, we would say, pure from one place. Everything, especially arts, music, culturally, it's all shared. It's a reminder people we all came from the same roots.
You mentioned that pipa has this power to carry listeners to dramatic peaks and serene moments. So what does it mean to you, this pipa instrument?
To me, pipa is part of my life, another person, another myself.
More like inner
sort of expression, but also shared with the audience, with the listener. So it's different. To me, it's like a person, but very much right now like speak Chinese language. Represent the Chinese culture.
And the Chinese energy, right?
Oh, definitely Chinese energy, yes.
How do you keep the young people interested in something that has so much history and so much tradition?
I would say this is a very cool instrument. That's how my experience. I started play music when I was 9 years old.
You never stopped?
Never stopped.
Do you think you will keep going?
I guess so. I think other than that, I probably don't know what to do.
So pipa kind of defines who you are as a person.
Pipa found me, or I found pipa. It's like...
It's both ways, right?
Yeah, both ways, and this is spent my whole life.
Well, good luck with this new album. I'm sure it's going to mesmerize the crowd. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
The headlines again. Chinese President Xi Jinping says Europe is a trustworthy partner for cooperation. He's been speaking to European Council President Antonio Costa.
China gears up for more foreign visitors during the Spring Festival as the country plans to expand its visa-free policy.
And France's new Prime Minister has been facing his first big test in Parliament as he tries to win support for the budget which brought down his predecessor.
And that's it for A Global Business Europe. Thanks for watching.
Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow. Same time, same place. All of the team here in London, it's goodbye.